Alright guys, so if you follow us on Instagram, you got a little sneak peek that this was coming up, but it's finally time for us to do the rear brakes. If you've been following the channel, you know we did the front brakes quite a while ago. Those were pretty bad when we bought the car. That was the more urgent one. The rears were passable, and we ran out of time. So I've been driving on those rears for a little while, but finally getting to swapping the rotors and pads on the rear. For those of you just joining, this is my 2000 XJR, so it's an X308. This should be similar for most of the model years up to, I think, 2004. Time you get to 2005 in the X350, they did change kind of how everything's set up. So, but if you're up to 04, should be relatively similar to this. So follow along and see what we're working with. So just to show you from the front side of things, these are the Brembo discs that we put on, and we do have new Brembo pads in there as well. And I'm sorry for how dirty my wheels are, but I have more on that coming up later. But yeah, so these are already lovely, fantastic brakes. They're quiet, they don't squeal. Been very, very happy with them. So now it's time to move on to doing the rears, as we mentioned. So I've already got the nuts loosened, and I've got it lifted up on jack stands, and it's sitting on the jacking points there. So basically these wheels are ready to come off. But before I do that, I'm going to show you what I bought. Made in the UK. So as far as the pads for the rear, as you can see here, they are the P36007, very James Bond of us. And you can see that they fit the X300, but they also fit your XJs up to 03. So I'm not actually 100% sure, maybe I was wrong with the 04 thing. I thought that was the same body style, but perhaps that was the transition year. But these pads do say that they work up to 03 on the XJ. Funnily enough, these exact same pads would actually work on our 96 XJS, which is kind of amusing. And then of course your XKs up to, I guess it's 96 to something, but it's blanked out there, so they don't really know where that ends, huh? So anyway, that would be the pads. They are not really anything fancy to look at, but I'll show you anyway. Hey look, brake pads. And they just look like normal brake pads. As much as these are Brembo brand, I don't have the fancy Brembo upgraded calipers that you could get as a factory option on these. So they are just some traditional style calipers. But that being said, it's at least good to have good quality parts on your car. So as far as the rotors, so we've got the 09 721721, and same deal. This one goes up to, I guess, 0503. So yeah, this has a slightly different model year range, but again, it does say that it works on the X300s up to 97. And then I guess from September of 96 to May of 03, I guess that's probably what that means. So yeah, you can see that these are solid discs, not vented. I believe that's what that would be. Yeah, and that they basically are Brembo branded. So looking at what we got in the box, it's exactly what you'd expect. Just a nice, clean rear brake caliper. And honestly, I'm impressed that this thing hasn't rusted at all, because this has just been sitting in my workshop for gosh knows how long. I mean, months and months and months. Because again, I got these at the same time as getting the front ones. And you can look back and see how long ago we did that service. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking now and get these rear wheels off. And we're going to start looking at how to pull the old rotors and pads. All right, so we got the first rear wheel off. As you saw, real straightforward. I'm actually using a standard 7/8 inch socket. I couldn't find my larger metric ones, but that does seem to do a good job on the lug nuts. It doesn't really feel like there's a risk of like rounding them off or anything, because these are one of those multi-part ones where it kind of has an outer case, so you do have to be careful with stuff like that, but it seems like I'm getting away with it. So anyway, let me show you what we're working with here in the wheel well. And also, one important note, I do have the front wheels chalked, as you can see. So both front wheels have a chalk front and back. I'm trying to get on the most level part of my driveway. It's not super level, but it's as good as it'll get. And I also have the handbrake set just in case. So I may need to release that at some point while working on the brakes here, but at least just while I was getting the car up in the air, it's obviously, you know, safety first. So as you can see, these brakes are grooved here. So they have like a nice little channel that's worn into them over what I presume to be quite a few years worth of use. So yeah, basically, you know, the pads had some decent life on them. You can kind of see it down in there. But again, it is definitely time to change these guys out. So that being said, I'm guessing this has a traditional style parking brake, which means I do have to release it because it probably has shoes inside of this central area here that are engaged with this brake drum right now. So I'm going to basically release that brake once I get the other wheel off, obviously, and then we'll work on removing this caliper and go from there. And also, while I'm in here, I'm going to do a little bit of digging, but very interesting suspension setup. I mean, I've heard of Jag IRSs before, but it's kind of cool to see one up close and kind of get to crawl all over it and see what it's all about. So looks like I got some bushings that are on their last legs a little bit here. Yeah, you know what, actually they're not too bad, but maybe we'll look at upgrading those down the road. Anywho, so we're gonna get the other wheel off and start looking at taking these brakes off. All right, so we have a floating Jag. Pretty easy, to be completely honest. I mean, definitely not the worst car I've ever had to lift up and pull the wheels from. And I've said it in previous videos, but I really do like the way the jacking points on this car work. It's made my life easier on quite a few little projects, so kudos, Jag. Wow, I really put that on. There we go. Okay, now we should be able to rotate these. Yep. All right, very cool. So first step is going to be trying to get these calipers off. And I'm hoping it's relatively straightforward. The fronts were pretty easy. Initial inspection, it just looks like probably these two big bolts right here. So I'm going to hit these with maybe a little PB blaster and see if I can't get a wrench on those. All right. There we go. One there. And one there. I'm going to go do the same on the other side now. Kind of predictably, those were pretty damn tight. So I ended up using a 15 mil ratcheting ring spanner, and I actually had to tap it with a hammer to kind of get them started. But it seemed to work. So a little bit of PB, 15 mil ratcheting ring, give it some taps with a hammer, and it should just start to get it moving to where it's going to behave. All right, so somewhat predictably, that has freed up the caliper. It is no longer attached to the control arm, I guess, or the hub. Yeah, no, the control arm. But I guess because of how grooved the rotor is, these pads are basically kind of set into the rotor, so I can't just conveniently pull the caliper off. So I do have some zip ties handy, so once I do get this freed up, I'm actually going to basically zip tie it up and out of the way so I don't have to disconnect any of these brake lines or risk overstressing any of them. So I'm going to fiddle around with this and see if I can get the piston to compress. And once the piston's compressed a little, that should open up enough space for this to just come off. All right, so we got it freed up. I used a method that I'm about 100% sure is not Jaguar technician certified, but it's pretty straightforward and I don't think it's going to hurt anything. So just to show you, let me flip you around here. In the top of your caliper here, you'll see this groove like this. So I got a rather large screwdriver and I put it down in the outer edge right here, and basically inside of that, and then I let the tip of the screwdriver overlap the brake rotor like this. That gave me basically a point of leverage where I could just kind of pry back, and it was just enough to compress the piston in the brake enough to slip it up and over. I would definitely not recommend that technique if they're nice new brakes and you're having to like take it apart for a second reason, but on old ones like this that are going in the trash, I don't think you're going to hurt anything. So hopefully that saves you guys some time. So now, and you can see I've got it zip tied up on this bump stop up here. So I've literally just zip tied through there just to hold it out of the way while I remove this rotor. Wow, I can't believe how easily that came off. Bonus points if you can guess what I'm listening to while I'm working on this. Leave what you think in the comments below. Alright, so I've basically cut the zip tie that I was temporarily holding the caliper with, and I've just stacked it up on top of these two little paper block things that I had laying in my yard. And basically the goal is just not to put too much tension on these brake lines. You know, I've always learned it's best not to mess with these if you don't have to. Bleeding brakes sucks. So anyway, basically we need to remove these pads. And much like the fronts, you basically got this metal clip here, which if I remember correctly, I was able to just get off with a flat blade screwdriver on the fronts. And then the rear, I think, is just clipped into the actual piston itself, like most cars. So I'm going to work on popping these out, and I'll let you know how it goes. Well, I used time-lapse on that thinking I was going to take a lot longer than it did, but that was super easy. Regular size flat blade screwdriver. And basically, this spring clip, like I mentioned, these two little hooks right here that I'm tapping with my finger right now are hooked into these holes on the caliper. And I literally just got the screwdriver under this little ledge right here and just popped it off. And I mean, genuinely, it's pretty straightforward. You just pop one side off, pop the other off, and the pad just lifts straight out. With well, you wiggle it in and then lift it out. And this one, I literally just put flat blade straight down on the inside and just popped this clip right here out of the center of the piston there, and it came right out. It's a shame, honestly. These pads have quite a lot of life left on them, but you know, I'm already in here and I already got brand new ones, so I'm probably gonna just do the full swap so I'm not putting, you know, these might have some weird wear on them or something like that, right? So we'll at least have brand new pads with brand new rotors going back in the car. So do a little bit of cleaning with some brake parts cleaner here, and just kind of clean up some of these little bits, and then lubricate the new pads, and got to clean down the new rotor as well with the brake parts cleaners. Important step, because these things usually have a coating of kind of like oil on them, which is what keeps them so fresh. So brake parts cleaner, make sure that doesn't mess up the bedding in of your new pads. So I'm gonna get going on that, and then we'll move to getting these new ones on. So like we always say, fun with old cars. I kind of goofed up on this one. Earlier in the video, you saw me show some brake pads, and we're gonna actually pop up a warning at that part of the video to warn you that those are the incorrect brake pads. Those are actually the part number for the front. I could have sworn that I ordered the front and rear rotors and front and rear pads all at the same time. Obviously, when I compared them to the old pads that came out, they were significantly larger, which jogged my memory that those were actually the old front pads that I took out, which were actually in great shape. So I kind of tossed them to the side as spares because they were practically brand new. Obviously, those will not work for the rear. So the correct part number is actually P36017N if you want the ceramic ones. That's what I've just ordered. So Rock Auto coming through. I'm guessing maybe they were out of stock or something like that when I went to order them in the past. So they'll be here in about 4 days. For what I'm going to do for now, because I do need this as my daily, I'm going to put it back together with the new rotors and old pads. For such a short period of time, it should be okay. It shouldn't damage anything. It shouldn't wear in weirdly. So basically, I do get to do part of the job again once those show up, but for now I can at least show you the procedure of putting it back together, and basically, you know, you can see kind of the reverse of pulling it apart, I guess. But yeah, stuff happens and you just got to get through it, right? Got to keep a good attitude, and it's easy to, you know, start throwing wrenches and getting mad and cussing, but what's that going to change? So for now, made the assessment that I want the car back, and so I'm going to put it back together. So I'm going to show you what those steps look like. So thankfully I was delicate with these pads and didn't do anything stupid like throw them in the trash or toss them around. That's why you're always careful with the parts you take out, because it's a smart idea to compare them to the new part you're about to put in. So I am actually going to show you, not that it's necessary because this is such a temporary thing, but I'm going to re-lubricate these just to show you the method. That way I don't have to film an entire second part to this and make you guys have to come back or wait to release this for longer than necessary. So I'm going to put the little dabs of lube on the correct spot in this and then put that back together in the caliper. And then I'll just repeat that exact same whole process with the correct pads when they show up, but you guys don't necessarily need to see that part. So yeah, we'll get on to lubricating these and getting them into the caliper. So this is the brake pad lubricant that we bought before. We bought quite a lot because we do work on a lot of cars, and it's done a really nice job on the front, so I'm happy to use it again on the rear. So basically, the key with these is essentially the contact points. So you definitely do not want to get any of this on the actual braking surface, and you also kind of don't want to touch the braking surface with your fingers even. So if at all possible, try and avoid that. But really, you want to kind of mock this up and see what it contacts in the caliper, so you can get a feel for where the lubricant needs to go. Mainly, you're going to be dealing with this circle here, around where the clip is, because that's what mates to the piston. And then these little contact points right in here, you can see they're actually worn shiny. And basically, those are the parts that contact other elements of the caliper, right? And basically, that's where you're likely to get your vibrations, your squeals, things like that, right? So it doesn't usually take much. So I'm just gonna get a little bit on here, and basically I'm just going for the whole thin film concept. Feels weird doing this on a dirty old brake pad. Usually these are nice and shiny and new when I do this, but hey, the stuff I do for TV, right? Okay, so that's close. I'm just gonna get a little bit more here. That'll do. And we're gonna get it in to these little areas here. And again, you really don't need a ton. You don't want it to be like pasty and thick, because then it's gonna just have excess that catches dirt and all that other lovely stuff kind of unnecessarily. And if you're not sure, you can always put a little on. Like I'm gonna put some dabs on here just because it looks like it potentially could contact in that area, but I don't think it does. Plus I had extra on my finger. So, all right, let's see if I can even show you getting this back in. But essentially it's exactly the reverse of pulling it out, right? So make sure you have it oriented the correct way. Get the tab into the piston there, and because these are old pads, I'm not caring too much about putting my fingers on the mating surface there, but it just clips in kind of like that. And there we go. Perfect. All right, so I'll show you. But basically, of course I got the screen backwards so I can't really see, but this is now in place. It's clipped, it's seated firmly against the piston, and you've got these little tabs kind of set in where they're supposed to be on this frame. And this frame does slide back and forth. That's how the whole caliper works, right? So now I'm gonna put the outer pad back in and that metal spring clip that held it in place. Same thing, I'm gonna lubricate the contact points, namely these two surfaces here. Hopefully you can see that. And then I think these slides contact it as well, so I'm going to lubricate the surfaces where that contacts, and we'll go from there. Okay, actually, might as well just do it while we're filming now. We're doing it live. I'm sorry for the road noise. I did not expect to be talking during this part. Normally I'd plug my mic in, so my bad. So as you can see, you can actually see a silhouette of where this contacted before. So I'm just going to kind of follow that with a little bit of this. And again, it's supposed to cut down on NVH and stuff like that, which is something that you want. You want NVH to be minimal, because that's the squeals and other unpleasant sounds that you can get from brakes. And the XJS actually has that problem at the moment. Which we will fix. Alright, there we go. So, getting this guy back in. There. Alright, so that's now rested roughly in place. And now it's time to get this clip back in. Man, I really hope you guys can see this. It's pretty self-explanatory. There we go. Yeah, so I just used my fingers to do that. I basically put this tab up on the top of the lip here and then pulled down on the piece that has the hook on it. And I pulled it down far enough for it to slip up into place. Same deal on this side, the tab is already up where it's supposed to be. From what I understand, this clip basically is just to stop the, like to keep pressure on the slide and the outer pad to keep them roughly in place, so you don't end up with it kind of wandering around and ending up where it's not supposed to be. Come on. This is not the most fun I've had with this, but I vaguely remember needing pliers to do this last time. I think I'd be smart and watch my own video of how I did this on the front of the car. That would probably make my life a lot easier. See, our subscribers are the smart ones. They're the ones that watch these videos and learn from them. Here I am not even learning from my own videos. Come on. Probably should be using needle nose for this. Alright, well hey, I'm not going to make you watch me struggle. I'm going to figure out how to get this last little tab in here. I'm guessing I just need some needle nose pliers to kind of get that lined up. So I'm going to take care of that and then I'll jump back in with you. Well, that was tons of fun. So it did end up basically just being using like a needle nose set of vice grips was my best bet, and just kind of really leaning on it. I was trying to kind of finesse it a little too much, and it just needed a little bit of brute strength. So basically just, you know, if you do have vice grips, it'll let you actually grab the spring, and I'll show you here as well. Hang on. There we go. So this center part, once you get one side in, if you lean on that with your thumb and kind of push that down, it'll bring this side inboard, and then if you get the vice grips on the metal here, you can kind of twist and pull, and as soon as you get it like kind of started in that little recessed area there, then it should be fine. So just a little bit of messing around, but in the end, yeah, not too terribly bad. So I think it'll go a lot faster on the other side. Well, actually, I guess the other side you're not even going to see me do, because I'm leaving the pads in until the new ones show up. So there is one part we're going to have to salvage from the old rotor here, and it looks like it's this little dust cover here. So basically pretty easy. You just have this little spring clip piece right in there, and all I did was grab it with a set of needle nose pliers like this. Doing this left-handed, sorry guys. There you go. And once you squeeze the spring clip, it pops right out. So I'm going to clean that up so it at least looks as good as it can when it goes in with the new rotor. But yeah, that's what you're dealing with right there. Easy enough. All right, so the camera died on me and the weather's coming in pretty fast. So I'm going to run you through what I've done, but it's exactly what you would think. Basically, I just added that little dust cover back into the new rotor here after cleaning it. Slipped the rotor on, it went right on over the shoes for the parking brake. And I should note that actually this dust cover, you'll see a hole in the hub. So you got your 5 wheel studs, and then there's actually going to be a hole between 2 of them in the hub, and you're going to want to line that dust cover up with it, because that's, I believe, used as a service item for adjusting the, or a service access for adjusting the drum. But either way, just make sure that lines up. Caliper back on, you got your 2 bolts in the back, again 15 mil. I just used the ring spanner, and I don't know the exact torque spec, but I can tell you it is very tight, so just lean on it like hell, and do use some thread locker when you put those bolts in. Honestly, it wouldn't hurt. Blue's probably fine. Red, if you don't ever plan on taking it off in your ownership of the car. But yeah, so blue thread locker, and essentially you're done. So sorry I didn't show you a detailed step-by-step, but I don't want to get rained on, and the camera dying kind of threw a curveball at me. But as you can see, significantly nicer result here compared to these rusty ones that I have since removed from the car. So, and I did do the other side while the camera was charging up, just enough to get this last little piece, and they look really nice in there. So, as always, hopefully this was helpful for you. Tell us what you think in the comments. If you have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to ask. And of course, if you did find this helpful and you own one of these cars or just want to see more of our content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you get notified when new videos come out. We do release a video every week, so you know, get to see some cool Jag content, as well as some of the stuff with the classics that we do as well. That should be coming up as it's getting cooler here too. So thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one. And don't forget, what music was I listening to while I was working on this car? Tell me what you think in the comments below. We'll tell you if you get it right. And this is how you know you've done a good job on a car. Your hands should look like that afterwards. Feel free to wear gloves if you're into that. It's probably healthier. For whatever reason, I just never have. But yeah, makes you feel good when you look at your hands and go, man, I did that.